Hey guys, guess what? It's that time again. Another episode of My Wednesday Comics. To be honest, I wasn't sure what I would pick up this week. I wasn't really tracking any books. But when I found out this first one was coming out, I got pretty excited because I had heard about it and I had missed it the first time came around, which was through Kickstarter. But yeah, the first issue of Faceless and the Family, which is an awesome name, by Matt Lesniewski, I think is how you pronounce his last name. This is a pretty interesting, very cool looking book. And then as I was looking on the racks, I found this one, Junkyard Joe by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. And this is, surprise, surprise, a black and white edition, which, as you know, I totally love and I'm a sucker for. And then this next one actually didn't come out this week, Transformers by Daniel Warren Johnson and Mike Spicer. It didn't come out this week. I think it came out a couple weeks ago, but it's worth a look for sure. Daniel Warren Johnson is one of the hot talents right now in comics. And finally, from the local library is Doctor Strange Fall Sunrise by Trad and Heather Moore. I'm a huge fan of Trad Moore's work. I'll go more into that when we do the flip throughs. But yeah, this is great to see this one in the collection and the fact that our library carried it. So let's get to it. Here's the first book, Faceless and the Family by Matt Lesniewski. Again, great title. I looked it up. This is a 4-issue miniseries. I originally found out about this through the crowdfunding circles. I thought originally it was Kickstarter, but it's actually Zoop produced the book. And when I first saw it, I was like, that looks interesting, but I had no idea what it was about or who this guy was. And then I started following him on Twitter X, and he just has a really incredible style. He was doing just like pinups of characters, Batman and I think Daredevil, and his style, I feel like he just draws with like a ballpoint pen. I don't even think the camera can do this any justice. You'd really have to look in close, but there's some super subtle hatching and forms here, and almost gives me like a Daniel Clowes vibe slightly. I don't know. It's its own thing. It's really, really interesting. And then when I started seeing some sample pages of this book, feels like a post-apocalyptic. If you say post-apocalyptic, I'm in. That is a genre that I am definitely in on. Crazy concepts here. Again, I haven't looked through this book until now. My hunch is this character here is the faceless character that wears this helmet. Love this kind of 3D hand lettering. I love that it's in black and white. I mean, you can see from the cover, obviously looks great in color too, but there's just something about that black and white image that works really well. Very, very solid forms. I love that he's hand lettering it too. And the mark making in it is what stands out. And the designs are really almost Escher-esque. I think he's looked at Escher. Feels like he's looked at Escher, but in comic book form. But it's really cool, like really cool forms, and then just subtle shading and lighting, and the guy knows his stuff. So this is cool. It's really refreshing compared to everything else that's out there. Some nice 3D sound effects here. 3D lettering. Like, I'd love to see toys of this guy's designs. They seem to lend themselves to 3D models. But looks like a great book. I don't know much about the story, but from what I can see just from the visuals, looks right up my alley. So I guess what I read just briefly was that he crowdfunded it. I think it was like $45,000 he ended up raising for the whole story. And then maybe Oni Press picked it up or saw it and wanted to produce it themselves or publish it themselves. So he's re-releasing that same story in individual issues now. But that's great. Faceless and the Family, issue 1. Next book is Junkyard Joe. And so I did see this one come out. I think it's done. It's a 6-issue series, and it came out originally. And it's by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. And if you don't know their work, they are veterans that work predominantly with DC, I think. I definitely know Jeff Johns' work, like with Green Lantern, the big recent Green Lantern stories. And Gary Frank worked on those as well. So they came out with this book, and I saw that it was like a wartime book, but there was like a cyborg or robot in it. I wasn't sure. But from what I gather, it is focusing on like war. And at the back of the book, and we'll get there, I'll flip there in a second. I think some of the proceeds of this books go to veterans and supporting veterans, which is pretty awesome. Like, I love when you can tie storytelling with not only a good story, good art, but that there's also a good cause behind it. Not that all stories have to have that, but it's really cool that they do. I didn't pick it up when it came out in its first release, but for some odd reason they decided to release a black and white version, and all of a sudden I'm on it. I just love black and white art when it comes to comics. I think seeing that ink on the page is comic books in its purest form, and I love to see the mark making and the imperfections and how they spot blacks. Like, that all really appeals to me, and I think it's just because I'm a student of what it means to make comic books, and seeing them in black and white really conveys that for me. Sometimes colors, as good as colorists can be, takes away from that, you know, and you don't get to see the marks in their purest form. Colors add in lighting and mood, and that's great. Don't get me wrong, but it's nice to see just the black and white art have to do that, and Gary Frank is super capable of that. Like, you can see all his mark making here on like this dude's face, or like the shadows here. Like, there's no coloring, right? But it's all kind of communicated through the inks. You really feel the pop of this negative shape here, which I haven't looked at the color version, but who knows how they would have treated that. Sometimes I've seen people like render in these negative spaces, or add shadowing or whatever, or effects, or like this smoke effect, like that it's rendered in ink line is awesome. Sometimes colorists will take that, they'll blur it, they'll add smoke effects or whatever, and I don't know. I love seeing it in its purest form. And it looks like there's great storytelling in this. It's beautiful. Get these like heavy darks here, and then all of a sudden this like really empty background in it. You feel that anticipation of what's about to happen next. Explosion. And it looks like Gary Frank uses like silhouettes, reverse silhouettes a lot in this, and really sets a mood. It's a great Richard Nixon face. Anyway, this is cool. That's really cool that they released a black and white version. Okay, and here is the section that's about veterans. I don't know if Jeff Johns and Gary Frank started their own imprint. That seems to be the way comic book veterans are doing now, is starting their own imprints and going independent. they're publishing this with Image, but this whole imprint of Mad Ghost, I'm curious to see what else will come out of it. But here's some dedications to veterans, which is really cool. So yeah, Mad Ghost. Thanks guys for releasing a black and white version. I love it. And I can't wait to read the story. Transformers #1 by Daniel Warren Johnson, and Mike Spicer is the color artist. Daniel Warren Johnson is both writing and drawing this book. He's, like I had mentioned earlier, he's definitely one to watch. He's a super hot artist right now. The first comic stuff that I saw of Daniel Warren Johnson, I think, was the Wonder Woman story that he did, which was really awesome. Again, it was kind of post-apocalyptic, and it was like in the far future. And the thing about Daniel Warren Johnson is he definitely has like influence from manga, and specifically how they do action. He does action sequences really well, as you can see here. A lot of energy, a lot of like speed lines. One thing to note is he actually has his own YouTube channel as well, and I've watched a couple of his live streams of him drawing, and it's really cool because he's just fearless with his mark making, and it's super admirable of how he just like attacks the page. The one I watched was he was live streaming drawing some pages from Transformers actually, and it was just awesome. So I highly recommend checking that out. He also did a book called Do a Powerbomb, which I have not read, but I've heard only great things about, which is about wrestling. And then I did read like a Beta Ray Bill story that he did. I think it was called Argent Star. And he also did another book called Murder Falcon. So he's done a lot, but he's really on the up and up. And obviously getting Transformers is a huge deal. The cool thing is you can tell he loves Transformers, that he's looking at the actual toys and just embracing how we played with Transformers as kids and making these huge grandiose stories with these crazy robots. Also, and I did read this one already, spoiler alert, he does not hold back on how intense he's going to make it. Like he basically, Starscream basically squishes this dude. It's pretty cool, very exciting. I will definitely be picking up this as a regular series, and it's a great pairing. I'm glad he got this opportunity to do this. Check it out. This oversized, I'll show this in comparison to a regular comic. So this oversized edition of Doctor Strange Fall Sunrise by Tradd Moore, and I believe Heather Moore is his wife. And I never picked up the individual comics because I knew they would release it as a collected. That's always the rub a little bit. Sometimes I'll buy both the collection and the individual issues. His wife was the colorist. Pretty cool. But in this case, I didn't. And it's interesting because Tradd Moore I'm a huge fan of his work. Actually, I have some of his first books that I discovered him. This was the very first time that I ran across Tradd Moore's book, was his Ghost Rider, and it's really cool. He basically took what we all knew as Ghost Rider and flipped it on its head and created a really, really cool rendition of it. Very, very high octane, intense. Like his action sequences always felt like they were just like turbocharged, going 1,000,000 miles an hour. Look at that. Great designs. And then he did his own book, Luther Strode. There's 3 of these novels. Again, super, or maybe Luther Strode came first. Let me see. Luther Strode 2014. Oh yeah, he did Luther Strode first, my bad. Anyway, super violent, really intense action, really fun story. So there's that. Then he did Ghost Rider, and then he got a lot of attention, started doing special issues and books in mainstream. Then he did this, The New World, which is a really cool book, and yet his style started to simplify. He did this like very clean, really clean lines. I don't know how he did it. Like, I don't know if he was inking with a technical pen. Really clean lines and geometry, like these geometric things he would do, and a lot of patterns. Yeah, such a unique style. And then he did this Silver Surfer Black series, which I think there was 6 issues of this. And he you can tell he's like pushing things. And I'll just go really quick through this because I want to go through Doctor Strange. But like these really crazy, he was just experimenting, but these awesome patterns. Yeah, it's, again, getting very almost abstract at times, which was pretty cool for Silver Surfer. And then the Doctor Strange was the latest thing he worked on, and you'll be able to see like his style evolved again. Part of me thinks that his earlier stuff was so detailed that he might have realized it wasn't sustainable, so he's trying to find like a simplified style that's still him but more abstract. I don't know. Part of me is like, I think he was embracing that as a Doctor Strange, and so there's a lot of weird Ditko-esque kind of bizarre surreal imagery, which his style lends itself to. But there definitely was a shift in his stuff. Like, look at that simplification of faces even. Really crazy, weird, surreal. I haven't read it yet. Look at these colors. These colors are pretty neat, interesting, very different. So, wow, there doesn't even seem to be that much text. It's just a lot of cool imagery. I love that they printed this in a larger format too, so you can really appreciate his artwork. But look at that, like he even has ink line outlining shadows, which is a totally different look. I'd love to get into his brain and kind of understand why he's making choices he does, because it's so different and yet so cool, so stylish. You definitely have to be on a mind trip to read this book. Crazy imagery. Look at that. Wow. I think it's perfect for Doctor Strange. I love how he gave Doctor Strange this like cool dude, long hair. So yeah, I mean, before, if you look at his earlier stuff, I can compare it to this. Like, see how clean his line was, like this thick and thin line. And here he's kind of experimenting more with kind of varying that up, making it a little bit more imperfect. It's crazy. This is crazy stuff, but pretty cool. Anyway, it's awesome that our library had it and I nabbed it. Ah, look, check this out. Daniel Warren Johnson. Pretty neat. It's trippy. It's like poster art almost, but pretty awesome. So there you go. I did 4 books this week, and I'm still trying to figure out the right amount. If it's too long, too many books, too short. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments what you think. I'm just so excited to kind of share what I'm reading and what I'm finding, that it could get out of hand every week. But yeah, I was really excited to record another one of these videos. Not the actual recording process, mind you, but just the thought of it, it just got me thinking of what I could share, and this would be a cool one to talk about. And so I'm surprising myself a little bit with these videos. I'm also trying to think of how I can support our local comic book stores. There's quite a few here. There's got to be a way that I can support them, advertise for them, not officially advertise, but just tell the world about them and share in the joy of comics, because they're a big part of that. So hopefully that'll be interesting. I'm still trying to figure out what that is, but stay tuned. Anyways, thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate it. Spread the word, share, like, comment, spread it. I'll see you guys next week.